Welcome back to the Book Nook. It's a section of the deep dive where we unearth those little nuggets of wisdom from some of the most fascinating books out there.
Always look forward to our deep dives
Yeah.
into the world of words and ideas.
Me too. And today we're exploring Elizabeth Gilbert's Big Magic, Creative Living Beyond Fear. And this book is all about, um, embracing a more enchanted, empowered, creative life. Even if painting isn't your thing or you haven't written a poem since high school.
Right. And that's a great point. It's not about becoming the next Picasso.
Right.
It's about infusing your everyday life with creativity, regardless of your uh, profession or passion.
Exactly. And one of the first things that really struck me was Gilbert's retelling of poet Jack Gilbert's question to a student. And it was, do you have the courage to bring forth this work? The treasures that are hidden inside you are hoping you will say yes. And it just really made me pause and think, do you have the courage to say yes to your own potential?
Oh, I think what's so powerful about that question is that it shifts the focus from talent to courage. So it's not about being the most skilled or gifted. It's about having the guts to show up and share your work, your ideas, your unique voice with the world.
Yeah, it's like giving yourself permission to create, even if it's just for yourself. Gilbert talks about her friend Susan, who rediscovered her childhood love for figure skating. She didn't try out for the Olympics or anything, but she found immense joy and a sense of fulfillment through it.
Absolutely. And that's a key takeaway here.
Yeah.
You don't need to quit your job and become a professional artist to tap into your creative potential. Small, consistent actions can make a huge difference. I think that's a great point. What small step can you take today to nurture your own creativity?
Yeah, that's such a great question for our listener to ponder. Now, what about inspiration? Does it just magically appear like a bolt out of the blue, or does Gilbert think it's a little more, shall we say, mystical?
Well, Gilbert's perspective on inspiration is certainly intriguing. She believes that ideas are independent entities, almost a force of enchantment seeking collaborators. We can choose to be open to these ideas or not. And she even describes her own experience receiving an idea for a novel set in the Brazilian Amazon, almost like it was gifted to her.
Wow. It's like ideas are these little creative sparks floating around, just waiting for someone to catch them and bring them to life.
And what's fascinating is that Gilbert recounts how her friend, novelist Ann Patchett, ended up writing a novel with uncanny similarities to the one Gilbert had abandoned, almost as if the idea itself hopped from one writer to another.
Whoa, that's wild. So how can we as listeners become more receptive to these creative sparks?
Well, I think it starts with cultivating curiosity and a sense of openness. What if the next big idea is out there searching for you? Are you ready to say yes to it?
Okay, I'm ready to say yes to all the creative sparks, but sometimes I get stuck thinking I need someone's permission to be creative. It's like I need a stamp of approval before I can pursue those, non-essential interests.
Yeah, that's a common feeling, but who are we waiting for permission from, right?
Yeah.
Gilbert's advice is to cultivate a sense of what she calls creative entitlement. Now, this isn't about being arrogant or demanding. It's about embracing your inherent right to express yourself creatively.
I love that creative entitlement. It's like giving yourself permission to explore your creative impulses without judgment or seeking external validation.
Right. And Gilbert also draws on a concept from poet David White, the arrogance of belonging. It's that quiet confidence to step out of self-doubt and into the vast unknown of creativity. It's not about ego, but about recognizing your place in the world as a creative being.
Okay, so I have the courage. I'm open to inspiration, and I've granted myself creative entitlement. Now comes the real challenge. Actually doing the work. And sometimes, let's be honest, the creative process can be messy and frustrating.
And Gilbert acknowledges that wholeheartedly. In fact, she encourages us to embrace imperfection. She even coined a term for it, the disciplined half-ass.
Discipline half-assed. Now, that's a phrase I can get behind. What exactly does that mean?
Well, it's about letting go of the myth of perfection. It's about prioritizing finishing projects over getting bogged down in endless revisions. She even shares an anecdote about having to cut a significant portion of her short story, Pilgrims, a piece she considered one of her best.
That must have been tough. What happened?
It actually improved the story.
Mm.
By making those cuts, Gilbert was forced to explore a different style, making the narrative tighter and more impactful.
So the lesson here is done is better than perfect. Sometimes limitations can actually spark unexpected creative breakthroughs. how can our listener apply this disciplined half-ass approach to their own projects?
Well, think about a project you've been putting off because you're striving for perfection. Instead of aiming for flawlessness, what if you focused on finishing a first draft, even if it's messy? Embrace the imperfections and remember you can always refine later.
That's great advice. Now there's this idea that's been floating around, follow your passion, but what if you don't have this, burning passion? What if you're just curious?
Yeah, well, Gilbert offers a refreshing alternative to the follow your passion mantra. She suggests starting with curiosity. Instead of agonizing over finding your, one true passion, simply ask yourself what piques your interest? What makes you lean in and say, that's interesting.
Oh, I love that. It takes the pressure off, right? It's like a scavenger hunt. Following those little sparks of curiosity, one clue at a time.
Exactly. And Gilbert shares her own experience of how a simple interest in gardening led her on a research adventure that spanned continents and ultimately inspired her novel, The Signature of All Things.
See, gardening. Who knew that could be such a gateway to creative exploration?
It's a powerful reminder that we don't need to have it all figured out. Sometimes the most incredible creative journeys begin with a simple spark of curiosity.
So for all you listeners out there feeling lost in the creative wilderness, ditch the pressure of finding your passion and simply ask, what am I curious about today? You never know where it might lead you.
And remember, the journey itself is just as important as the destination.
I love that.
Yeah.
Speaking of journeys, Gilbert tells this really moving story about artist James Rizzi, who, after a personal loss, found solace and creative renewal in painting stars on bicycles.
Yeah, and this highlights the power of simply showing up and doing the work. Even when you can't see the bigger picture or the end result, sometimes the creative act itself is the therapy.
Yeah, it's like sometimes the process is the reward. And this ties into Gilbert's concept of fierce trust, right? Trusting in your creative process even when you can't see the outcome.
Exactly. Trusting that something meaningful will emerge even when the path ahead is unclear.
So trust the process, trust your intuition, trust those little sparks of inspiration.
And most importantly, trust yourself.
Trust yourself. Oh, I love that. Okay, so we've talked about courage, inspiration, permission, persistence, curiosity, trust. We've covered a lot of ground already.
It's like we're building a toolbox for creative living.
I like that. And it's a toolbox filled with actionable advice. So what's resonating most with you?
For me, it's the emphasis on action over perfection. It's not about waiting for the perfect moment or the perfect idea. It's about starting where you are with what you have and embracing the messy, imperfect beauty of the creative process.
Beautifully said. And that's a perfect note to end part one on. But don't go anywhere because in part two, we'll be diving even deeper into big magic. We'll explore how to navigate the ups and downs of the creative process, handle criticism, and cultivate a more playful and fearless approach to bringing your ideas to life.
Yeah, and we'll also touch upon some thought-provoking anecdotes and insights from the book that didn't make it into this part.
Until then, keep those creative sparks flying.
Ready to unearth more gems from Big Magic.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. One thing that's been kind of swirling in my mind is this whole idea of like not taking our creative work too seriously.
Ah, yes, the danger of treating our creative work as, our precious baby.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like it's like this fragile thing that needs constant protection and validation and
Right, right. And Gilbert cautions against that mindset because it can lead to creative paralysis. If we cling too tightly to our work, we might become terrified of criticism or failure. She suggests thinking of our creative work more as a teacher than a child.
that's an interesting way to look at it. How does creative work act as a teacher?
Well, it challenges us to grow, to learn new skills, to push beyond our comfort zones. It teaches us resilience, patience, and the importance of embracing the unknown.
Hmm. So it's not about, achieving some perfect outcome, but about the lessons and growth we experience along the way.
Exactly. And this ties into Gilbert's debunking of the, tormented artist myth. The idea that suffering is necessary for great art. She believes that while discomfort is often part of the creative process, equating creativity with suffering is unhealthy and even dangerous.
Yeah, it's like romanticizing pain, which
Yeah.
can be really, detrimental to our well-being.
Right. Gilbert advocates for a more joyful and playful approach to creativity. She calls it stubborn gladness.
Stubborn gladness, I love that. It's like choosing to create from a place of, joy and curiosity, even amidst challenges.
Yeah, it's about finding that sweet spot between discipline and playfulness, being dedicated to your craft while not taking yourself too seriously.
Now, what about those days when inspiration just seems to have packed its bags and gone on vacation? You're staring at a blank page or canvas, feeling completely like uninspired. What does Gilbert suggest we do then?
Well, Gilbert emphasizes that inspiration isn't always, this dramatic lightning bolt moment. Sometimes it's about, showing up and doing the work, even when you don't feel like it.
She tells that wonderful story about artist James Rizzi, who, after experiencing a personal loss, found solace in a rather unexpected way, painting stars on bicycles. And it perfectly illustrates this point, doesn't it?
It absolutely does.
Yeah, yeah,
It
yeah.
highlights how engaging in a creative act, no matter how small or insignificant it may seem, can lead to healing and renewal. It's about trusting that inspiration will often lead us along the way.
Sometimes the creative process itself is the medicine.
Speaking of medicine, what if we applied this idea of stubborn gladness to dealing with creative roadblocks? Instead of getting frustrated when we hit a wall, what if we approached it with a sense of playful curiosity?
Oh, I love that. It's like turning those roadblocks into opportunities for exploration and discovery.
Right, right. And Gilbert also emphasizes the importance of trusting the process,
Yeah.
trusting your intuition and being open to detours and surprises.
Because sometimes those detours lead to the most incredible discoveries, just like her, unexpected foray into the world of gardening blossomed into a full-blown research project that spanned continents and inspired her novel, The Signature of All Things.
Which brings us back to that idea of curiosity being the compass on our creative journey.
Yeah.
It's those little nudges of interest that can guide us down fascinating creative paths.
So instead of chasing some, elusive passion, maybe we should just be asking ourselves, what am I curious about today?
Absolutely. It makes creativity feel much more accessible and less intimidating.
Yeah, for sure,
Yeah.
for sure. But let's be real, even when we're feeling, inspired and following our curiosity, there will inevitably be challenges and setbacks. What about criticism? That can be a real creativity killer.
Yeah. Gilbert doesn't shy away from this topic. She acknowledges that criticism is inevitable, but she
Yeah.
she offers some valuable advice on navigating it. Firstly, she reminds us that not all criticism is created equal.
Right. There's constructive criticism that can help us, improve, and then there's destructive criticism that's often rooted in, the critic's own insecurities or agendas.
Right. And she encourages us to develop the discernment, to distinguish between the two, to recognize which voices are worth listening to and which ones are best tuned out.
It's about developing, a thick skin, but also being selective about whose opinions we allow to influence our creative choices.
And Gilbert reminds us that ultimately our creative work is an expression of our own, unique voice and vision. We shouldn't let the opinions of others dictate our creative path.
So we shouldn't bend over backward to please everyone.
Exactly. She encourages us to trust our intuition and create from a place of authenticity. She even says, it ain't what they call you, it's what you answer to.
Oh, that's powerful. It's about owning your work, even if it, ruffles some feathers.
Right. And remembering that the creative journey is a personal one.
Yeah, absolutely. But let's talk about another big challenge. Fear, fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of not being, good enough. How do we overcome that creative paralysis?
Well, Gilbert doesn't suggest trying to eliminate fear altogether. She acknowledges that it's a natural part of the creative process, but emphasizes that it doesn't have to control us.
So it's not about, becoming fearless, but about learning to create alongside our fears.
Exactly. She uses a brilliant metaphor describing fear as a mall cop who thinks he's a Navy SEAL,
Yeah.
all puffed up and trying to intimidate us.
Oh, that's a hilarious image.
Yeah.
So it's about recognizing that fear often, exaggerates the danger.
Precisely. And choosing to create, despite those fears, Gilbert encourages cultivating fierce trust, trusting in the process and trusting in our ability to navigate the ups and downs.
It's like having faith in the creative journey, even when we can't see the destination. This ties back to her concept of big magic, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. Big
Yeah.
magic for Gilbert is that mysterious and often unexplainable force that drives creativity. You
Yeah.
know, it's the spark of inspiration, the sense of wonder and enchantment that infuses our work.
It's like acknowledging that there's something, bigger than ourselves at play.
Right. She believes that the universe is inherently creative and that we as humans have the capacity to tap into that creative energy.
So it's about being open to those, magical moments, those unexpected bursts of inspiration, and recognizing that the creative process is a sacred act. But how do we stay connected to that big magic when real life gets in the way,
Hmm.
Jobs, responsibilities, distractions.
That's a great question and something we'll explore further in part three. We'll delve into how to cultivate rituals and practices that help us, stay connected to our creative energy, even amidst the demands of everyday life.
Sounds like a plan. Until then, dear listeners, keep those creative sparks flying.
Right.
All right, so we're back for the final part of our deep dive into big magic. One thing that's been really resonating with me is this whole idea of creative entitlement. Like we don't need anyone's permission to live a creative life. But what happens when, you're surrounded by people who just don't get it? The naysayers, the dream crushers.
Yeah, that's a valid concern. Um, Gilbert actually offers a really insightful perspective on this. She draws on this fascinating concept from Bali, the distinction between sacred and profane.
Oh, I'm all ears. Tell me more about
Yeah.
this.
So in Bali, there's this deep-rooted tradition of sacred dance. But when tourism boomed, Westerners flocked to these performances, some with, less than respectful attitudes, let's
Sure.
say. And this presented a dilemma. How do you preserve the sanctity of the dances while also acknowledging the economic realities of tourism?
Yeah, that's a tricky balance for sure. So how do they handle that?
Well, the Balinese priests came up with this ingenious solution. They created a new set of dances, which Gilbert refers to as gibberish dances. And these dances incorporated elements of the sacred dances, but without the deeper spiritual meaning.
So like a tourist friendly version.
Precisely. But here's where it gets really interesting. Over time, these gibberish dances, initially intended for entertainment, gradually became integrated into the actual sacred ceremonies.
Wow. So the lines blurred between sacred and profane.
Exactly. And Gilbert uses this as a metaphor for our approach to creativity. It's not always about rigid categories or seeking external validation.
So what's the takeaway for our listener?
I think sometimes, the most unexpected sources can spark inspiration and meaning. So don't dismiss something just because it doesn't fit a preconceived notion of what's, worthy or artistic.
That's a great point. It reminds me of something else Gilbert talks about,
Yeah.
embracing paradox in the creative process.
Yes. She describes how she approaches each sentence she writes with meticulous care, as if it holds this immense weight. But then, she's also willing to ruthlessly edit or even discard those same sentences if they don't serve the overall purpose of the story.
So it's about holding your work with both, reverence and detachment.
Wow.
Kind of like that Balinese concept of blurring the lines.
Exactly. It's a dance between, passion and objectivity,
Hmm.
between pouring your heart into your work and being willing to let go of what no longer serves the creative vision.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But I have to confess, one of my biggest fears is putting my work out there, making myself vulnerable to criticism and judgment. How does Gilbert deal with that?
Well, Gilbert is very open about her own experiences with criticism. She's received both, praise and backlash, particularly after the success of Eat, Pray, Love.
Right. It must have been pretty intense being in that spotlight.
Yeah. She's been accused of stealing ideas, of not being a real writer, but she doesn't let those voices, define her or dictate her creative choices.
That takes a lot of courage and resilience.
It does. And she emphasizes that it's not about, pleasing everyone. It's about staying true to your own vision and trusting that your work will find its audience.
So it's about creating from a place of authenticity, not from a desire for approval.
Exactly. She also reminds us that not all criticism is valid or helpful.
Okay.
It's crucial to develop discernment and to recognize which voices are worth listening to.
It's about filtering out the noise and focusing on the feedback that genuinely resonates with you.
Right. And remember, the harshest criticism often comes from people who feel threatened by your creativity or haven't had the courage to pursue their own, creative dreams.
Ooh, that's a good point. It's not personal. It's often about their own struggles.
Right. And Gilbert even offers this rather playful suggestion for dealing with those who criticize your work. Tell them to go make their own damn art.
I love that. It's like if you're so critical, why don't you try creating something yourself?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's a way of reclaiming your creative power and not letting negativity derail you.
One of the things that really struck me about Big Magic is that, it's not just about, being creative in the traditional sense. It's about living a more soulful and meaningful life.
Yeah, I completely agree. Gilbert encourages us to view creativity as a spiritual practice, a way of connecting with something, larger than ourselves.
And finding joy and wonder in the process itself.
Right. She emphasizes the importance of gratitude for the gift of creativity, for the opportunity to bring beauty and meaning into the world.
So it's about approaching creativity with reverence and playfulness and that fierce trust we talked about earlier.
Exactly. And recognizing that the creative journey is a lifelong adventure,
Yeah.
full of both challenges and rewards.
Well, this deep dive into Big Magic has been truly inspiring. I started feeling a bit, creatively stuck, but now I'm feeling energized and ready to embrace those creative sparks and imperfections and all.
That's wonderful to hear. Gilbert's insights are a powerful reminder that creativity is not a destination. It's a journey. And it's a journey we can all choose to embark on, regardless of, our background or experience.
To all our listeners out there, we encourage you to explore Big Magic for yourselves and discover the transformative power of embracing your own creative potential.
Yeah, and remember, don't wait for permission. Don't be afraid to be interesting, and most importantly, trust in the magic that unfolds when you say yes to your creative journey.
Until next time, keep those creative sparks flying.